you gotta be so insecure? Yeah. I hope y'all like my vocals this morning. I'm drinking coffee, not Jameson, not tequila, just coffee. It's early in the morning, but I really had to get this episode out. I thought it was a good message, and I wanted to keep with the tradition of putting out something for my Death 2 series. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that the Death 2 series kind of started all of LBF podcasting. I started the first episode with Death to the Good Girl. Last year, I did Death to the Good Guy. And this year, we're going to be doing Death to the Insecure Girl. So yeah, let's get into this topic. Not only am I going to discuss like how we kill the insecurities within ourselves, but I also want to touch on briefly the Insecure series, the HBO series with Issa, because it's always great conversations come from those episodes. Not necessarily this last one, because y'all were doing a lot with a little when it came to this first episode, but we ain't gonna talk about that part of it. I do want to focus on just having a real discussion about where we find ourselves. I think a lot of times we uphold this ideal of confidence, this idea of being self-sufficient, never needing validation, always having just extreme confidence in everything. But as humans, that's just not how we operate. And we've already had the confidence episode. Go check that out, part 1 and 2. In LBF before, but this one I wrote it for myself, of course, first, because I realized that I still struggle sometimes, and it happens in a very subtle way that I don't think is as obvious as, not thinking I'm pretty or not thinking I'm good enough. Sometimes it's just those smaller things that lie underneath the surface that makes me feel insecure about either myself, where I am in life, or even sometimes my creations, whether it be podcasting, blogging, any other business ventures I have. Sometimes we have those emotions, and we try to, when we feel them, instead of dealing with them, especially with something like insecurity, because we have drilled into our head, we have affirmed ourselves so much that we embarrass or we shame ourselves for feeling insecure. And in order to really get on the other side of it, we have to be more honest about why we feel the way we feel, where that feeling is stemming from, and then actually get to the root cause of it so that we can have a conversation with ourselves. Be like, hey, why are you feeling like this? Like, it's okay for you to have these feelings of inadequacy in this moment before you just try to dismiss it, because sometimes we are our worst critics when it comes to, or our worst assailants when it comes to dismissing our own feelings. We look at other people and we tell other people that, oh, you're dismissing my sadness, my anger, you're dismissing my emotions. And yet we do that a lot to ourselves. Like, so if you can relate to this, just stay tuned. This isn't going to be a long episode, but it will be something that is going to get your mind working, as always with LBF, right? So to start off with insecurity, let's define it. It's an uncertainty or an anxiety about oneself, lack of confidence, right? Lack of confidence is, I know a lot of people like, what am I trying to say here? Lack of confidence is one of those things where it's a scale. Sometimes you're going to feel really good about yourself one day, and then the next day, whether it be an event or whether it just be your own kind of internal battle, you're not going to always feel like your best self. You're not always going to show up as your best self. And so sometimes your confidence is going to be one of those spectrum type things that you can be really good for a while, then you can fall somewhere in the middle, and then sometimes it's on the low end. So it's something we always have to balance out and work. So what causes us to feel insecure? So I got a few points from this article that I read about this, when I did my research, quote unquote. And I'll share the link in my in the description for this episode, but it's from a Psychology Today article. And I just thought it did a really good job of kind of breaking down where some of those emotions come from and how they, play out in our lives. So they had three things. The first one is insecurity can be based on recent failures. And when I read that, I was like, oh, that's so true. Like, you could be really good, like your confidence, again, a spectrum. You could be really good for a while. And then if something happens and it's not necessarily something great, but it's something that you feel like you failed at, it affects how you see yourself. It affects how you see your creative mind, your business mind, your relationships. Like, depending on where that failure took place, it affects your view of you. And it's really hard sometimes to continue to operate in the capacity of thinking highly of yourself whenever you have a failure. So those feelings of insecurity kind of creep in there. So we just have to, I don't know, we have to be cognizant of that thing, because you are going to fail in life. And when you fail, how do you view yourself? I know for me, whenever I feel at something, because honestly, it happens a lot, not a lot, but it happens often enough where, like, I might not do something well, I might not know something. And so in that sense, I kind of fail at it first before I get better. That's really true for me. Like, sometimes I will fail first. And I've had to learn to not equate my failures to my worth. Like, just because I might not be great at this thing, just because I might not be successful in this way, does not mean that I'm not worthy or worth something, or doesn't mean that I have to lower my self view and confidence because of this thing. Because I'm going to attack it until I get it. But in all honesty, some stuff you're just not going to get. Some stuff you're just not going to be good at. And the more I allow myself to live in that reality, the more I'm able to assign self-esteem, self-worth to a place that is more rooted in the truth of who I am. So instead of allowing all these other things to affect how I see myself, I already know, like, okay, I'm gonna attempt this thing and it may work out, it may not, but it doesn't hit as hard as it used to if it doesn't, because I already know, like, okay, girl, well, you tried it and it was okay. Like, it didn't pan out the way that you wanted it to. Um, and so they said the research shows that up to 40% of our happiness quotient is based on recent life events. So if you have been struggling recently with feeling insecure, having, you know, not being as confident as you feel like you usually are, just look at the things that have been happening in and around your life recently, and see if it's some kind of things that you can connect those dots to. Because whether it be you didn't perform as well at a job as you wanted to, or you just had a relationship and that didn't work out, or a friendship ended, some of that stuff is going to leave like a sour taste in your mind. Not only for the other person or the situation, but for how you view yourself. And we have to be really careful that we're just not going out here. And this is also why, I don't know if I had the conversation yet. I think I mentioned it at one point here on the podcast, but we have to be really careful not to assign our self-worth to our accolades, to the things that we do, to all this stuff that really has nothing to do about who we are. I see it so much, even this past week. People assign their self-worth and how they view themselves to organizations, to jobs, to creative ventures. And on some level, yes, it isn't, all this stuff is an expression of how you view yourself. But if something doesn't pan out, and then it's going to feel like an attack to you, because you have invested so much of your worth and your view into these things that, of how could you not feel insecure when something fails? How could your happiness not take a hit because you have wrapped it all up in these things, instead of understanding that you hold value because you're you. You hold value regardless of what job, regardless of what organization, regardless of anything, you hold value. The next one they mentioned was social anxiety from being bullied or having critical parents. This can lead to feelings of insecurity. So, a lot of times we think about adolescence when we hear things like being bullied or even having critical parents, but the residual effects of those things last well into our adulthood. And if you're so used to being criticized, a lot of times we become overly critical of our own selves. We cultivate this mind that kind of try to protects us from other people being able to call us out on something, right? So for me, like, being bullied, quote unquote, lightly bullied, picked on, teased, whatever. When I was younger, I knew like, okay, I'm gonna just stay out the way. I'm not gonna draw any attention to myself. I'm gonna make sure that I have X, Y, and Z, all my ducks in a row, so that I'm not the butt of anybody's joke, or I'm not, you know, bringing any unnecessary attention to myself. But the way I did that was being overly critical. Are you wearing the right clothes? Is your hair the right way? Are you saying the right things? And because you're so awkward, sometimes you don't. So I'm going to just be quiet. And over time, when you have cultivated this critical voice in your head, it's going to make you feel insecure. So any space you walk into, you're already wondering if you're walking in as enough, because you don't want anyone else to see all these other things about you that you have not even really dealt with yet, that you haven't found peace within yourself yet. Having critical parents, that's another thing too. You know, um, I've been blessed, but I know a lot of people, have conversations or they talk to me about, their relationships with their parents, for women, particularly mothers, who, can pass some harsh judgment about life choices, about appearances, about all these different kind of things. And that core root of, it's like they plant the seed of insecurity within. But if you don't ever pluck that seed out, in some way it's going to get nurtured. So every failure, that seed is going to get nurtured. Every time, every time you question yourself, or you have a bad day, when you look in the mirror, you have a bad hair day. Now that seed is getting nurtured. Like those small things become big things, and it makes sense. It does make sense. So look at your childhood too. Look at the relationship you have with yourself, that inner voice. Like, are you always being overly critical of how you show up, of who you are? And if that's the case, then insecurities being what they are, they're going to be able to creep in every single day, because you're already cultivating a space where it can thrive. And perfectionism is the third one. Not only can cause insecurity, but depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and chronic fatigue as well. And I am a recovering perfectionist, y'all. Recovering perfectionist. I think that goes hand in hand with that, with the social anxiety from being bullied, and having critical people around you. Perfectionism perfectionism is one of those things that we try to assume or be, and assimilate into, as far as our lives. We try to be perfectionists because we want to have control. If I can control the way you see me, if I can control this outcome, then it's still assigning that value to our self-worth. If I can be perfect, then I can be worthy. And when that's the barometer that we're moving on, if I can be perfect, then I can be worthy, you always gonna fail. You always gonna fail. Sometimes it'll work out. So when it works out, you feel really good about yourself. You put on that dress, you got energy to go out. But when it doesn't, it's a hit. It's a hard hit when things don't work out, because you lost that control, because it's not perfect. Um, I was somewhere. I think it was at the jazz club probably a couple of weeks ago, and something great. One of the organizers said was, the goal is to progress, not to be perfect or something like that. Like, if we understand, like, progress, not perfection, is a realistic goal, then we can release ourselves from the idea that we have to control everything, that we have to always show up as our best selves. Because that's something I'm dealing with too. Like some days I'm not gonna be my best self, y'all. Some days I'm not gonna say the right thing. Sometimes I'm not gonna look the right way. Sometimes I'm not gonna have the energy for it. Like sometimes I'm gonna make mistakes. And being able to say that allows me not to feel insecure, but to feel honest about who I am. But it's still a struggle. So like I wrote something last night. I don't even know if it's coherent, but I'm gonna try to read it. Um, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna read it because I wrote this after. So now LBF is getting in the habits of going live every Friday. And if you know anything about me personally, which I think all of y'all at this point know a little bit about me personally, if I'm honest, if you listen enough, um, y'all know I'm pretty laid back, chill, not in your face kind of a person. Like I'm out there just enough, but as far as like going live and doing all that type of stuff, it's a new reality for me that I'm doing in support of my brand to push, engagement and things of that nature. But it's not always easy. And I found myself being overly critical of myself um after each live, if I'm honest. Like, did I ask the right questions? Was I too loud? Did I overtalk people too much? Did I get my point across? Like, did I provide an atmosphere for a conversation to thrive? Like, just over and over and over again. And so I wrote this. It might be all over the place, but y'all work with me. It's going to be a part of the blog post that I have yet to write about Death to the Insecure Girl. So y'all be on the lookout for that. So I said, I leave every live, every episode with small feelings of inadequacy, wondering if I delivered my own thoughts properly. Did I become too bold, too passionate in my opinions? Did I share a little too much of my experience? Fighting with the image many have of me as this soft, sensual voice with a bolder, more ferocious reality. Should I apologize to the guests for injecting an opinion that held them accountable, even though they may have introduced the topic? Why am I still attempting to be likable? Is this people pleasing 2.0? Am I enough for my platform? Am I enough for my dreams? Was I enough if he didn't give into me fully? Where that came from? Listen, I was going down a rabbit hole. Am I healing or am I becoming more callous? So again, that's usually how that's usually how all my poems and blog posts start off, as very random flowing thoughts, and usually I just write them out on my phone. But that was a real representation of like where I was mentally after, even after some episodes I do. I was having a conversation with another creative, and I was just like, a lot of times I'll get off an episode or a live, and I'm just like, I don't think that was good. Like, I don't think it was good. And then I'll listen back, and I'm just like, wow, like it was better than good. It was great. Like, why are we so critical of ourselves? It's another example of an insecurity that we have yet to actually face or deal with. Like, and I say this as someone, I share that because I want y'all to know, like, a lot of people, they look at me and they are so surprised when I talk about stuff like this, and I'm just like, I don't know why. I've been open and transparent about my journey with confidence and everything since the beginning. When you see me post or when you hear me talk about certain things, that doesn't mean that I've kicked the habit. It means that I'm trying to. So yes, I can be confident one day and I can still admit that I'm struggling with it the next. But if you're hearing this with me, let's get into some ways that we can kill these insecurities in ourselves, because we killed the good girl, or we thought we did, because I did mention people pleasing in that. But now we're going to kill the insecure girl. So I'm going to read some response from the builders about this question that I asked them earlier this week on how do they kill the insecurities within themselves. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So One builder said, I speak against it. I speak loudly, the opposite of the security with I am affirmations. And I love affirmations. Affirmations are a great way to kind of rework our thinking, our energy, speak life over us. But we also have to make sure with those affirmations that we are doing the work to believe in them. Because sometimes when I affirm myself, I don't necessarily believe the words, I'm just saying them. You know, do I really believe this about myself? Or am I just saying it because I want to believe it? And it's okay. Like sometimes you're going to say things, you're going to be speaking life over yourself before you actually get to a place of belief. But if you've been doing like different affirmations and stuff for a while and it's still not sticking to you and to your spirit, maybe it's because we need to put the work with the actions as well. Like, and so that's for me how I have to be careful with that. Like, yes, I have sticky notes everywhere. And clearly we still working on some things. So I love that response. That's a great way to start. But we start there. We don't just leave it there, you know. Um Another builder said you have to face them, get rid of your pride and ego, and recognize when you're tripping. Yeah, like I said in the beginning, a lot of times with insecurities, we don't want to admit that we have feelings of being insecure, especially in this day and age where toxic positivity is so prevalent. And I'm going to talk about that at one point. Like, y'all, you don't have to be positive 24/7. Like, nobody operates like that. So when you try to force yourself to do it, it's coming from a false place. Like, it's not real. And we push away our feelings. We try to deny our feelings of insecurity as if that's actually the same as taking care of them. If you just push something to the side, that's exactly what it is. It's pushed to the side. That doesn't mean you actually did anything with it. It's still there. So you can deny that you have feelings of insecurity all you want to. You can proclaim you the baddest, whatever, you so whatever. But what I see more often than not is a lot of our insecurities are, if we're paying attention, they're obvious. You know, if you are an observer of people, you will notice when someone is kind of feeling insecure within themselves. And I think that's what helps me give a lot of people compassion, because I can see that a lot often than others. You know, so somebody can be loud and they can be boisterous and they can proclaim a lot, but underneath that, I'm just like, I'm not buying it. So just start with being honest with yourself. Like, put that pride and ego aside that's telling you that you have to be the best, that you have to be the greatest. But the reality of it is sometimes you feel small. Sometimes you feel second best. And until you can admit that to yourself, you're going to keep playing into this cycle of feeling really, really high about yourself one day. And then the next, you're feeling really, really low because you have not really dealt with the feeling of insecurity on the level that you should. Another builder said acceptance and getting uncomfortable. Y'all know I love like just this concept of being uncomfortable. I really do. Um, you're probably squirming in your seat right now with this conversation, but hopefully you're still with me. You're still sitting here listening, and you understand that that discomfort is coming from usually a place of truth if you're still listening. Like, and so it's okay. I'm here with you. Like, feeling insecure is a natural feeling. It's a natural feeling, just like any other emotion. That means you don't stay there though. You know, we don't stay in those feelings. We don't actually buy into the hype that you're not good enough, because it's not true. Just actually get uncomfortable with it and accept that, okay, I'm feeling this way right now, but we're going to get into some ways on how I was about to say, I was about to get into a tip, but we're gonna get into that in a second here. So, how do we combat feelings of insecurity? So, the best piece of advice I have or for killing the insecurities within ourselves are about 5 or so tips. So, uncover the root of where those feelings of insecurities started for you. Whether it starts with your failures, it starts with your childhood, it starts with your perfectionism, or it's all three just swirling around and circling around within your mind and your spirit and your body. Get down to where the source is and then start dismantling those things one by one. And the way we start to dismantle those things is we actually start telling the truth about ourselves. Like, okay, I might not be good at this, but you know what I am great at? I'm really great at this. Or this person said this about me. Is it true? I'm saying this about myself. Is it true? I failed at this, but it's okay. Like start actually dismantling a lot of those things that start out as roots for our insecurity. Affirm what we know to be true about ourselves. So those affirmations should be a daily practice. They should really, you should, whenever you feeling low about yourself, I have certain things I tell myself. I can't think of them right now. Like I have this one thing I always tell myself. I don't know. Y'all stick with me. If you do want to hear some affirmations, Micro Speak is really great at affirmations. That's not really LBF way, but have this one thing that kind of, if you can tell yourself and it actually hits you in a good spot and makes you feel better. I know when I affirm myself, it's kind of like I'm affirming my inner child that needs to be nurtured and helped and loved. I'm like just rubbing on her with my inner voice. And so just find whatever that phrase is, whatever that word is, whatever those affirmations are, tailor them to you and just keep repeating them as often as you need to. Do the work so that you can really believe in what you're saying. And the more you say it, the more you should believe it. Find the magic in your life. That's something I had to think about too. It's like, as a creative, as a creative, things could be really weird and not weird, but they can be a little challenging out here. Sometimes because we're so close to the things that we create, it feels strange whenever you see those things regurgitated, or whenever you feel ignored, or whenever you feel like it's not getting enough support. Like it feels like a lot sometimes. But when you find the magic in your life and those things spark joy, like you keep just reminding yourself how beautiful you are. And it kind of combats whatever insecurities you have. When I create, it is the true expression of my spirit. How can I not look at the things that I speak on, or LBF, or the whatever, whatever my creations are? How can I not look at those things and think that I'm amazing? Surrounding yourself with those who are willing to remind you. Like when I have my moments, like sometimes they don't last that long, but I always know the people I can talk to about my feelings, my honest emotions, and they're going to just remind me, like, it's okay to feel that way. And then they're going to tell me all these amazing things about myself. And it's not seeking validation. Actually, let's stop there. Y'all, I want y'all to, like, at least for my belief, everybody needs to be validated. If a tree falls and no one hears it, does it still make a sound? Yes. But it's like, if you went your whole life, just to put it in perspective, you went and you were involved with somebody, y'all married, y'all having a great time or whatever, and they never say I love you. It's the same concept. Sometimes you need to hear things. And it's not as validation is not as toxic as y'all make it seem. Or a lot of people, I can say y'all, a lot of people make it seem. I believe there's a place for it. And in moderation is a part of any healthy connection, friendships, relationships, whatever. Yes, I need you to tell me I look good. Like, do I know that? Yeah. Do I still need to hear it from you? Yes. Like, so yes, validation has a place in our connections. It does. Now, if it takes you hearing someone to tell you that you're wonderful and all the good things about you for you to actually believe it, mm-mm. But sometimes you just need to be affirmed, validated in your experiences within yourself and within life. And it's important for you to have people around you who offer that, who give you those words of affirmation, which is one of the five love languages, which is basically just validation. But I digress. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who are eager to remind you who the hell you are, because they love you and they see the beauty in you. And sometimes we falter. Sometimes that confidence is a little bit lower than we would like it to be. And we need people we trust, people we admire, to tell us the good things that they know to be true about who we are. Um, Understand that your failures are a snapshot and not a constant truth. Again, you're not going to be great at everything. When you fail, you okay. Like whatever that failure looks like for you, whatever you internalize that failure as, it's not a complete truth. It's just a snapshot. Now, if you allow it to be a constant truth, that depends on how you let these insecurities and things manifest within you. But, you know, and stop apologizing for being you. I find myself doing that a lot, like apologizing. I realize with me, death to the insecure girl means me letting go of not only the image, because of course that was death to the good girl, but I kind of rebranded it. So, okay, yeah, I don't have to be the good girl anymore. But what I can be is the soft, approachable girl. I can still be, the sexy one, I can still be all these other things and I still labeled myself or allow people to label me. But the reality is different. I've realized with a lot of my recent conversations that I've always been fierce in my opinions. I've always been passionate. And especially when we start talking about things like dating and stuff, I had to ask myself, like, dang, are you getting bitter? Are you what's happening here? What was happening is no, I'm just being honest. And I wasn't okay with it because it didn't fit with whatever brand I had for who Antoinette was. Antoinette was never all this out in your face problematic, or not problematic, but this bold in her speech patterns when it came to talking about some of these topics. And now that I'm more opinionated when it comes to those things, how does that look? What does that sound like? But then I traced it back. I traced back the reality that you've always been outspoken. Being outspoken doesn't mean you talk a lot. That don't mean that you go out there and you express your opinion to any and everybody, but in the right setting, you've always been an advocate for women. You've always been an advocate for yourself. You've always been an advocate for healthy and loving and compassion. Like, so when those topics come up, you go in and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Um, I'm gonna end it there. As far as the portion that we're gonna be talking about, insecure girl. Because now I want to just briefly touch on this first episode of the Insecure, the HBO series, my favorite show. If y'all want to hear recaps, if I'm not mistaken, the DJ Blaze radio show is doing recaps of Insecure episodes. And there's also another podcast, Insecurity, and the T is spelled TEA. They do really good recaps. I have been listening to them for a couple of seasons now. They do like recaps after every episode. And yeah, so make sure you check those out. And I just kind of want to just touch on the overarching insecurity for this episode, which was reunited. And the thing that I think hit most people was when Issa was on that stage. I had secondhand embarrassment, first of all, but she was just like, she don't have it figured out even at 30. She doesn't have it figured out. She's going through a major career change. By the end of the episode, we realize she's going through a major relationship change as well. And everything's changing for her at this point in her life where she feels like she should be established. And I want to talk to that point. I want to talk to this point that I think what kept a lot of us going in our 20s was this idea that the 30s would make it all worth it, that we wouldn't have to work as hard, we wouldn't be insecure. We had this vision of who we would be at 20 or so when we were kids, and then the reality hit different and we adjusted from there. But we did the same thing with our 30s. And for those of you who are in my age bracket, this message is tailored specifically for you. I know there are some people who are older or younger, depending on that, but take the core of the message, not so much the logistics of it, like the take the core of what I'm saying. Sometimes we rebrand stuff and we think that we've eradicated those core feelings that we had, those core insecurities. For us, for me, it was easier for me to look at my 20s and was like, I had to work so hard in my 20s. I wasn't self-aware, I wasn't confident, and I made a lot of choices based on those things. By the time I get to my 30s are gonna be so much better. I'm gonna have it figured out. Like, I'm gonna have it together. The reality is different. I mean, I'm in my first year of 30, but at the end of the day, I realized that that's what I did. Your 30s are going to be better. Now, granted, they will get better. I'm working very hard to make that happen. But I'm just like Issa. I'm going through a career change, relationship change, friendship, friendship change. Okay, I lost friends that I had for a decade and plus, um, having all that stuff happen in a time in our life where we thought we were going to be better than what we were in our 20s, it puts things in perspective that we just kind of rebrand our insecurities. We cover them up, we place them, somewhere, lock them away, and then when it's time to actually deal with them, we don't know how to do that so much because we never actually dealt with them. We just rebranded it. So if you are 30 plus and what Issa is going through like resonated with you, no, find love in that. Find love in feeling seen by this incredible show, but also know that so many people share that truth. And it doesn't end here. Like a lot of people is like your 20s are for making mistakes and your 30s or something like that, or your 20s are for having fun or something. And I'm like, my 20s were for building. And guess what my 30s about to be? For building. And my 40s for building. Like this is a total commitment because I realize that a lot of things that we try to dismantle, it takes a lot more time than we actually say it does. So whether it be confidence and insecurities, building up financial freedom, realizing what I want to do with my life. My niece called me the other day. She's a senior, y'all, my baby girl. And she's at that point in her life where, everybody's looking at her for an answer. And I've made a lot of my life decisions based around being here in a position to help those in my family, to help mentor and guide them. And so it was just full circle for her to come to me for that guidance because I had been trying to drill it in her since she became a teenager. She wasn't trying to hear it, but she knew that she can come to me. And she's like, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, baby, I'm 30. I don't even know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was like, the world is going to sit here and tell you that you're supposed to have this shit figured out. You're not. You can have a best guess. My best guess for my life is what it is. I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to be a massage therapist. I'm also going to be a soldier. I'm probably going to tack some other stuff onto that. I'm definitely going to publish a book someday. Like I can be these different things. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to stay there for 20 plus years. I don't know what I want to be for the rest of my life besides being myself. And when we look at it that way, it helps dispel this very general insecurity that we're supposed to have these things figured out, that we're supposed to be better at this, especially when you feel like you see other people around you who seemed like they knew who they wanted to be and how they wanted to be at a very young age. That's their path. That's their story. It got nothing to do with you. Some of us are going to be a little bit more freer than others, floating out here in the ether. And then we're going to have to figure it out that way. But we also have a very unique perspective that we can share with the world, as opposed to people who, have and have that structure. These insecurities tell us, or these things that tell us that we are supposed to have figured out, that we're supposed to know, they're a breeding ground for us to feel insecure. Just like you see on social media, everybody buying the house, people starting a family, people getting married and engaged. And it's like, it's great. If you are not there yet, it is okay. Y'all, it's all right. What do you have to be insecure about when you are as amazing as you are? And this is why I continue to tell myself and tell us, like, we have to stop assigning our value and our worth to these things. You are still worthy regardless of whether you have a ring on your finger. You are still worthy and still amazing regardless of whether you have that house you want yet, the car you want yet. I mean, like, the list goes on and on and on. And for some of us, other things are a source of insecurity for us that aren't for others, and vice versa. Like, things that I care about are not necessarily the traditional things. So it's easy for me to look at other people and be like, which I see all the time. It'd be easier for me if I wasn't empathetic and compassionate to look at somebody else, but like, I don't know why y'all be so up in arms about marriage, and y'all need to be focusing on the blah blah blah. And I'm just like, okay. But if somebody comes for your career and tells you, try to strip, if that doesn't work out for you, then that would be a source of insecurity, because that's where you place your value. A lot of times our insecurities come from, most of the time, our insecurities come from the things we place value on. And that doesn't look the same across the board. But I think that this particular line that Issa said struck so many people because she did it with a broad stroke. If you're at a certain age and you're not where you feel like you should have been or where you want to be, that's a recipe for insecurity. And so I love that conversation. So just think about that. Like, what are the sources? Like, what are your values? And then see if they match up with what you feel insecure about. Mm. And then Issa and Molly's friendship. I'm not gonna go into depth about it. I just love that it seems like they're being attentive now. It seems like they're listening to each other now. And when the last season ended, I said that, oh, great. Now here we got this trauma bonding. Granted, this is the first episode, I don't know. But I know with a lot of friendships, when you have this kind of very deep disconnection, the way that they had, a lot of times people try to come back in and not talk about what happened. The fact that they had to talk, they're working on it, they're being open and vulnerable with each other. Now, if you remember, they weren't doing that so much last season. They were keeping stuff from each other. They weren't talking about stuff until it escalated and blew up, which is what I see with a lot of friendships. A lot of friendships. So I love the fact that they are paying attention to the details of each other. Like the fact that Molly knew when Issa was hungry, the fact that she actually jumped in front of Issa whenever they were getting quote unquote robbed. Like, it was so amazing to see that and to understand that that was a source of love for them, to be able to say, hey, we done been through some things, but we want to work it out. Like, this is important for me to work it out. Like, are we going to be okay? So, across the board, it's normal to feel insecure at some points in your life. But at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. It's a fleeting moment if you allow it to be, just like any emotion. It's not there to stay. So, this is it for this episode, this special release. Happy Halloween, you guys. I'm in my like Kill Bill get up. I don't have my sword or nothing, but I'm just chilling around the house today, getting ready for another week. Cause yeah, y'all can have all the Halloween festivities this year, but I do hope that you just tap into like your whimsical side. I know a lot of people keep talking about, the experiences they don't have or they haven't had as kids. One thing about me is I realized a while ago, like I want to have magic in my life, even if I have to create it. Like, so get dressed up, and if you get dressed up, share your pictures. Like, have fun with life. That's my advice. And you guys can follow me on Instagram at Kantoinette underscore the blogger. You can also follow the Let's Build Futures page at let's underscore build underscore futures. And of course, YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Okay. So that you can get the notifications whenever I do upload new videos. Make sure you guys subscribe to LBF Podcast on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen. Make sure that you're following so you can get the notifications about when I do upload new episodes on those platforms as well. And until next time, I love you guys. Death to the insecure girl. This is gonna be a great season, y'all. Bye.